fresh blood, red, white, and black graffiti on the walls of Dublin. All have to pay the bankers. As the criminal Kirchners, Nestor and Christina did in my country, Nestor and Christina Kirchner, who do not help the people, but they did pay $10 billion cash and in dollars to the IMF in January 2006. All governments, whether it's in Argentina, in the European Union, or in the United States, are there to serve the banking cartel, not the people. That's why we need to found a second republic, and I will be dealing with that in separate videos. So alert. Will the British petroleum scare computer plunge the Dow Jones Industrial Average to new lows? 9,000 points, 7,000 points, 5,000 point Dow? I'm not kidding. Second, will the US devalue, be forced to devalue the US dollar by 20%, by 40%, by 60%? Will the US default on its $14 trillion public debt? We went through it in Argentina. We had 100% inflation in June of 1989 and 200% inflation in July of 2009. It's tough. In July of 1989, sorry. 3. Growing social upheavals. Greece, Spain, Iceland, Ireland, England, Portugal, Argentina, Romania, the US Tea Parties, Mexico, Canada. We see it on the news every night. What do you think that it's all about? It's people who are complaining because they have to pay more and more taxes, get less and less salary, so that the state can pick up more and more money to pay the bankers, to pay public debt, to pay the IMF. We are all held ransom by this system. Another trigger, the 6th one, terrorism mega attack. That is a wild card. Will we see at some point a nuclear artifact or a similar weapon of mass destruction over a US or European city? That would generate a new chapter in the global war on terrorism. And who will it be blamed on this time? Iran, North Korea, Syria, Venezuela? Keep that wild card in mind. 7th trigger, war in the Middle East. The Zionist camp are really stuck. They need to flee forwards. War with Iran, building up by the hour. It's been announced by Israel since they lost the war, their invasion in southern Lebanon in the middle of 2006. There are false information about Iran being propagated by the mainstream Western media. Iran is being demonized, that Iran wants to wipe Israel off the map. What Ahmadinejad said, quoting Ayatollah Khomeini, is that what Iran wants to see is the Zionist regime pass into the pages of time, to disappear. Just as the United States wanted the Soviet regime to disappear in the Soviet Union, which did not mean that the United States wanted to wipe Russia and Ukraine off the map. It meant that the United States worked hard and finally did achieve that the communist regime should disappear. Well, Iran wants the same for Palestine, that the Zionist genocidal regime should disappear, and that a two-state solution for Israelis and Palestinians should be put in its place. The only country having weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East is the state of Israel. They have just shown how berserk they can go with the attack on the humanitarian flotilla, which was basically a Turkish flag operation. Why Turkish flag? Well, because Turkey and Brazil had just announced an agreement with Iran whereby the whole problem with the nuclear project would be diffused, and that really put all the Zionists very, very edgy. I mean, Brazil is one of the key countries, one of the key BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, and Turkey is an Islamic country, but it's also in NATO. They are two very, very credible countries. So Zionism was able to impose Resolution 1929, 9th June of 2010 from the United Nations that tries to turn Iran into a sitting duck. I quote, "No direct or indirect supply, sale, transfer of war material to Iran, no battle tanks, no armored artillery, no fighter aircraft, no helicopters, no warships, no missiles." What do you expect? They're telling Iran, just sit there vulnerable whilst the Israelis nuke you, or whilst the Americans nuke you. What would you do if you were an Iranian and you are being threatened by the world's premier global superpower and by the state of Israel? Would you just say or stand around and say, oh no, they're not going to do it? They will do it. They already have been given the green light for Israel or the United States or both together to make a combined attack against Iran, and that's going to usher in World War III, which is what they're looking for. What will Russia do? What will China do? What will Pakistan and India do? They are all nuclear powers. What about North Korea? We're really being dragged into a crisis unprecedented in the history of mankind. Eighth trigger, a nuclear or ecological accident. Finally, it was not a nuclear accident as I had thought in December 2009. It was an oil accident. It's the United States Chernobyl, the Deepwater Horizon event. That floating platform, floating oil rig, exploded as oil gushed up from 18,000 feet below the surface of the water. That's the deepest undersea well ever drilled. It gushed up at 50,000 pounds per square inch pressure. The accident occurred because of insufficient safety measures. There is co-responsibility and accountability from the US government, British Petroleum, Halliburton, and it was all lies from the very beginning. At first, British Petroleum said, oh, it's only about 1,000 barrels per day. Then it was 5,000 barrels per day. Then it was 20,000 barrels per day. Now we're almost at 40,000 barrels per day. Where is the truth? Is it 80,000 barrels per day? Is it 160,000 barrels per day? A lot of this oil is staying underwater. The blowout valves all failed. It seems that what British Petroleum and Halliburton have done is that they have ruptured the seabed in the Gulf of Mexico. They have unleashed an oil volcano that no one can stop. Do you understand what the implications of that are? Will that poison the entire Gulf of Mexico? Driven by the Gulf Stream, will the oil slick destroy Miami and the Florida beaches? How far north will it go? Will it pollute the entire North Atlantic, Europe, and beyond? Who can tell? Because they're all lies. British Petroleum, from British Petroleum to Obama, it's all lies, and the area is being increasingly militarized. And on top of it, the hurricane season just began, which is forecast to be the worst in history. 23 major storms, 7 of which will be Katrina-type events. Will we be seeing 120 mile per hour hurricane winds sucking up the oil from the Gulf of Mexico and dumping it all over Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, and even further? The Russians have suggested to Obama that he should put a nuclear artifact on it because it seems the Russians had similar problems on the surface and a nuclear bomb was able to fuse everything and that would stop up the hole. Will we see them nuke the Gulf of Mexico? Will the collapse of British Petroleum help sink the stock markets, as I said a minute ago? Don't forget, all these triggers are not isolated. They all interface. They all interact. On top of it, British Petroleum has already used more than 1 million gallons of a product called Corexit 9500. It's an oil spill dispersant, highly toxic to human beings, 75% of which stays on the surface, 25% of which has stayed underwater. Will we be seeing mass evacuations of coastal cities in Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama and Texas and Florida and further inland? Can you imagine the chaos? However, that is music to FEMA's, Federal Emergency Management Agency's, ears. At some point, the world government will say, we need a global effort to stop the spill and clean up the mess. Even the United States cannot cope with the technological, logistical, ecological, social, and economic chaos. It's just too big. World government will have to fix it. And that is going to start ushering in everything. Don't forget, the Chernobyl nuclear disaster of April 1986 was the beginning of the end that triggered the fall of the Soviet Union. Is the Deepwater Horizon rig sinking and explosion the beginning of the end of the United States as we know it? Remember, Hollywood has been preparing us from movies like Deep Impact in 2012 that when the American president is black, he just cannot solve problems. And the crises overwhelm him. And one last point. Was it an accident or was it triggered? Like from space, which is militarized. The rig exploded on the 20th of April. Funny, Hitler's birthday. And then on the 22nd of April, it sank on Earth Day. I like these symbolisms. A lot of Masonic symbolism there. A massive fireball. We've all seen it on the television. However, if you look at some of the photographs just before it sank on the 22nd of April, you will see that the helipad, which is jutting out of the rig, is a very different story. It has one clean hole bored on it, and it is very clean. There's no soot, there's no smoke, it's even white around the edges. And it did not come from below, because there's another photograph showing that below the heliport, everything is intact. Because it says juts out, it was away from the main explosion. There's actually windows there which seem to be intact. It was, the hole, the massive hole on the helipad was done from above. Who did it? It looks like a laser beam. Take a look for yourself. So, stay tuned, stay alert, be ready. Up next, we're going to talk about the Bilderbergs, and we're going to talk about the Second Republic project, which is the real hope for mankind, an idea whose time has come. Thank you.